Welcome back to another video on the Social Root channel and Green Shoot. It be a long time. It have been. Personally, I've been busy with work, not have much videos to record, and to be doing them. I have been damaged by breaking my teeth again. I just took some time off to recover, and this video is a debate with, wait to see, a Labour fanboy. That's what I call him. He believes the Labour government is doing their best, and they done something maybe wrong, but he will, in the field, defend Labour to the best of his possibility. He will be doing. I'm really excited. My webcam lagged a tiny bit. I'm testing out a new software called iRecam. For some reason, my phone link app on my PC is not connecting my webcam to my PC, what I usually use to record. I am sorry for any lag spot in this software. Right, feed on to the video right now. Now, oh, we got Finn now. He is a goddamn Labour supporter. We're going to have.
Well, I do my best to keep a moderate view, but everyone's going to have a bit of bias, I think.
Yeah, we're trying not to be too biased. I know I'm a Green supporter, but we're not biased to the parties. We can say when the party is wrong, and we can support them when they're doing it right.
Yeah.
But the first question is: we know Labour is down in the polls, and Keir Starmer is the most unpopular government in history. That is just a fact. But why do you think Labour support your values? And why do you think Keir Starmer support your value and is the right person for you to do the job?
Okay, I'll comment on the polls first of all, because you mentioned that. Obviously, with the polls, it's an extremely high margin of error. You've seen some polls on YouGov the other day, and they reference different sources. I can if you want me in a minute. And it basically said that the Greens were on 9% one day, and the next day they were on 15%. And there was such a high margin of error between Labour and Reform. One poll shown a 3-point difference, another one showing a 13-point difference. I don't think the entire representative. But obviously, Labour have dropped support in most categories across the country. Reform is taking seats from red wall areas, possibly some London areas, and very prominent in the northeast as well, which is where kind of the Tories and Labour have dominated, mainly the Tories in some areas. On Keir Starmer being the most popular Prime Minister, obviously, I think when we have to look at polls again, you have to actually measure that it is basically the public's opinion on a specific day. So obviously, on that specific day, his public perception wasn't great from the majority of, voters. But I think what we really need to take from this is that actually representative of the public's view? Because if we've looked on public satisfaction across some areas, such as new transport links, we've seen from quotes that they are actually being happy with these type of things, like the B network being expanded, for example. So obviously, I think some things can be quite misleading, and you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But I do think that Labour's popularity will improve. On the values point, the reason that I think I align with Labour most is because me and a lot of other people's main problems are the north-south divide, right? And child poverty as well. And Labour has, I think, focused on that a lot of it. Obviously, you've seen free school meals coming in from September 2026. You're going to see every child whose parents are on PIP, they have to fill out a form and they'll be eligible for free school meals. And they're already rolling out thousands of breakfast clubs across the north. So I think that is a massive thing which they're doing to try and reduce child poverty. Obviously, there's been some skeptics on whether the two-child benefit cap is going to be lifted or kind of raised in the autumn budget of that. Obviously, that's coming out in November 2026. No, November 26th. Sorry, this year.
Yeah.
So I think we have to look at it with a balanced view. And obviously, I just think that Labour is focusing that a lot. Whether you compare other parties, I think they're kind of focusing their view on one whole view across the nation, whilst Labour are really trying to be specific on some of the divisions. Obviously, they're not perfect. You still need to get better. And people like Andy Burnham have focused on that a lot more. And if you know the child the other day, not child, I think the young man was it, who basically done a whole lot of work for a particular company for thousands of free hours, hundreds of free hours.
Oh yeah, that one
Sorry,
at
the original.
Rachel.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, he's been now offered a new job offer at Asda, and Andy Burnham's worked closely with that. He was speaking on that on X. Again, I can get it up if you want.
Yeah.
But I just say that those are the reasons mainly, and you have to take it with a pinch of salt with polls, of course.
Yeah. I do like Andy Burnham. He won the good part of Labour. Personally, he is. I do have respect for Andy Burnham with the B network and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, they do need to move the two-child benefit cap that is putting a lot of child in bad
Obviously.
moments. They should have done that when they come to power, not be skeptic about it. We got the money. We should not be scared taking people out of poverty. If we can afford tax bait for billionaire, we can afford to take the child out of poverty with the two-child benefit cap.
Yeah, and the Treasury's obviously looked into it more in recent weeks, of course. Obviously, I think Lucy Powell, the one who's running for deputy leader, she's kind of put it on the main stage, put it on the talking point, the relieving of the two-child benefit cap. And I do believe that that's going to happen in the autumn budget because it's been talked about for a number of years. And I do think that Labour, their main issue right now is trying to connect with left-wing voters who have either shifted to whether it's your party, the Greens, or they're now undecided. Obviously, you've seen the by-election in Caerphilly
Yeah,
yesterday, which showed that
I'm
Labour
going
was
on
on
to that.
11%. It was shocking. Yeah, Plaid Cymru won that. I was happy that they won that because I think over reform it would be, in the national interest and the local interest.
Yeah, that was one of my
But
questions down. That was. I was going to bring that up. I mean, you done that before me.
yeah,
You read my mind then. But then on to the pie company we saw in Caerphilly. But I think that it's a good result for Wales. You have to take what it's a very bad result for Labour because Labour have held that seat for since the Senate was created in 1999 and on the general day for 100 years. That seat had never been a different kind of party. I mean, it is. I did I put my phone on silent? Cause sorry about that. That is a very bad result for Labour personally. Cause they lost their seat, what they hold for a long time.
Yeah.
Pie Company. Yes, they didn't lose it to reform. That's a good part, but they did still lose it. So, the Welsh people are not happy with the Labour government in the UK and the Labour government in Wales on certain areas.
Yeah, I mean, then again, I'll reiterate the point. If you look at, like, say, quotes, for example, or the actual attraction in material investment, it's looking very exciting. The industry shift in Wales right now, that obviously they've had a number of renewables been invested in some. That's what Labour's actually focused on, the biggest investment in Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland in a generation. I think that's double what the Tories put in 2 years, so it is massive. The election, yes, I think Labour is losing the grasp of, like the typical white working class voters, which is in that area, and also just left voters as a whole. I will say that a number of voters, which were Labour voters in that area, came out yesterday and said that they actually tactically voted Plaid Cymru because they didn't want their area to be reformed. So I think that it would have been Labour at around 20%, maybe slightly higher, if that wouldn't have happened. But obviously, we have to focus on what is the interest of the people, and that is to not have a reform government, and having a seat in the Senate would assist in that.
For Wales, yeah, 'cause they got the election in May, where I do see Pie coming to overtake in the Senate and in control of maybe it. Cool.
Mm.
Welsh Labour have been tossed for 25 years since it always been tossed, and more people are not
Yeah.
seeing the improvements what they want to see. And personally, I think more people like Pie coming than over Welsh Labour at the moment.
Yeah, it's looking that way in opinion polls. I would say if you look at the amount of investment which Wales got and that the Welsh government got, which was Welsh Labour at the time, it is completely undermining what they needed. So I think to look at it on a view which Labour has failed would be quite misleading. I do think they've been let down by consecutive governments of the Tories, constantly underinvesting in the area and pushing for austerity. They did that for almost a decade, under the definition. So I think you have to look at it in that way. Next year's election in May for obviously the Welsh Parliament, I would view that as a very decisive time for Labour because obviously they have a number of strongholds there for many, many decades. And I think it's a sign if they lose that, then, they can easily lose Scotland. Their support in Scotland is quite actually close to the SNP right now. But again, it's these like nationalistic parties which have came in and kind of swept away Labour's vote share, and I think that's one of the things which they need to focus on most because if they lose that, then it's a real sign that they can lose anywhere in England as well.
Per se, they are losing more support to the left than to the right. More people are leaving Labour because they say Labour now gone too far to the right, saying Australians put in immigration to the most important part. Immigration always top one because every single party, Reform, Labour, Conservative, are all talking about it. We need to stop the boat. We need to stop the boat. Every single news say what you're going to do to stop the boats. When we need to focus on cutting cost of living, bringing community back, fixing up your area with houses, bringing down the NHS rates, and stop just saying stop the boats. Yes, the boats do need to stop, but how you stop the boat is not sending them back. Creating safe and legal routes is a green policy. See, and immigrating them more better. Building up your community centres. You don't immigrate the people, you cultivate it in your areas.
Yeah, with the Labour shift and right, I think that in many ways you could look at this as a classical centre-left government with the free school meals which they brought in. They're going to nationalise all passenger trains by the end of this parliament, which is going to be a boost in local support and, like you said, cutting the cost of living for people commuting from area to area. And obviously, we've seen with the rise of the struggling job sector in recent years that that's a massive thing for people commuting because they have to get the lowest cost and the highest wages. So that's a massive thing. And also, I think if you look at what they've done with the Libraries for Primaries campaign, that's going to improve literacy rate in schools by the end of this parliament, and that's going to ensure that every child has a efficient start to life and good opportunity. So I think you could look at it in that sense. With Labour, the narrative on the boats, I do think that they've not focused on it in the best way. I think that the way in which they're tackling reform, they're kind of making themselves look a bit desperate. For example, obviously, what you said, opening safe and legal routes, there has to be a necessity for this government by the end of the parliament. I do think on diplomacy they have done quite well with Albania. Obviously, they've tackled and sanctioned a number of gangs which have orchestrated these type of things. And if you look at like those specific cases, well, they've actually harmed people in cases of murdering, kidnapping, and abusing them. So I think Labour's done a good job on that. The one in, one out deal. Obviously, you had someone yesterday which got brought back into the country via a small boat, and they'd previously been deported. So that's something which they need to look at. But I think that is something for the French authorities to focus on because it obviously happened under their watch. But obviously, Labour's going to speed up these deportations of people who have no right to be here. They're going to speed up processing and they're going to make sure that the right people are here, and that's why they're putting, more essential services into asylum hotels, for example, to actually make a safer environment for people.
Mm.
So that's what I would say on that. But I think that the narrative does need to change. Whether who changes it is a totally different thing. It just needs to change. But I think you have to look at it in a balanced view, of course. And obviously, tens of thousands of young men crossing the channel every year is a massive part of the issue with immigration. And I would go on to that point to say it's an issue with irregular migration. We can talk about other immigration and, the possible tweaks you can make to that. But that's what I would say on that specific point.
Point. Personally, the small boat crisis did start because of Brexit.
Mm.
It did. Before Brexit, it wasn't a thing that we didn't have small boat crossing, really. We might have a couple, but they was not in the news at all. Because since we left the EU in 2019, and when we got that Brexit deal over the line by the Conservative Party, they did. What kind of Brexit deal that was? It was a sick one. Do you think it's time to get back in the EU under some kind of agreement, or stay with Brexit and try to make something work?
Well, it's a great question. I think that when you look at the EU, for example, we obviously left it in January 2020, I believe it was, when Boris Johnson got the worst possible deal.
Yeah.
Obviously, he changed his whole narrative. He went from a Remainer to a Leaver just because to fit his own profile. He's a terrible prime minister, to say that.
Yes.
I think on the other things, obviously we left the Dublin Agreement, which is one of the reasons why, why we can't actually access safe and legal routes and why we can't deport the right people in time. So I do think that that's a massive thing. And Labour started in PMQs a number of months ago, I think in early September. Keir Starmer actually said that he was going to try and reiterate this deal, so strengthen it with outside nations. And with the EU, do I think it's time for us to join? Obviously, the most optimal answer would be yes in principle, but in practice, it's going to have to be no because we've got no sets to bring with us. We've had the Tories selling off for a number of NHS deals and a number of land deals in recent years. Obviously, I think the Qataris own, quite a big proportion of London land, which is going to cut up the cost for normal people. And when you look at like our agriculture section, for example, Labour's currently not meeting those deals, and it wouldn't meet the EU deals. So I don't think in practice it is like the right decision to join the EU, just because I think it would be very unrealistic. But I do think in the coming years we need to start having this decision, and Labour's trying to focus on reducing tariffs on material costs, for example, and I think that's a massive thing which needs to be done. Just increasing relations with them, reducing the burden on trade, and actually getting these exciting job sectors flourishing again.
Yeah, it will be hard to ever get back in the EU, because we left it under very bad terms. Kicking out the pram, personally, under lies by Nigel Farage and UKIP back then. And we get back in, they might force us to use the euros instead of the pound currency. I mean, we can't have our own reserve currency in the world. That could be a bad thing. I would love to join the EU one day in the future, but we need to look at it and see if we still allowed to use the pound as our own currency, or do we have to accept to go to the euros for more EU wars than we did in the past. Because we were quite free, because we didn't have the euro in the UK, we had the pound sterling, where every other country mostly trade in the euros.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of pressure on the EU with other neighbouring countries. There's been some countries like Romania and Sweden, for example, who have had a burden put on them to kind of introduce the euro. And I think that Romania did do it earlier this year, or they're in the process of doing it. So I do think we would be kind of precautioned into that if that did happen. Obviously, with the euro and pound, I think that right now we are becoming more similar to the US in industry. So I think that taking on the euro would be ever hard because the US is actually trying to cut relations with Europe in some manner and open up alternative routes.
That could be because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so again, I think it's just about getting the best deals. Obviously, Labour's made some deals where it's going to be easier for young people aged 18 to 25, I believe, or maybe an extended age category on, actually having free travel for universities. And I think that's gonna, kind of cut the fiscal drag in upcoming years. I think that's going to be extremely beneficial. But I think there's a massive problem with the left right now where, you know, like you said, everyone is kind of talking about the EU. I think, the referendum was in 2016. Whether we want to say that another referendum should have been held or anything, I think is irrelevant in this time because I think, we are outside of the EU right now. We have been for 5 consecutive years. We need to focus on getting the best possible deals for us. I think Labour's making a start. Start with the India trade deal. A lot more needs to be done. But I think the main focus here is what can we actually make out of this? And if some point in the future the situation gets bad, then we could start to, renew negotiations with the EU because we obviously had a number of connections with, say, Germany, for example, with tackling immigration. We've got new deals with France in industry, and we've not got new deals with Norway for shipbuilding. That's been a new recent thing. So I think we just need to have a look on what things can we actually make from this and what things is going to be the best deal for us.
Yeah, I mean, in probably hopefully 35 we might join EU, but no time soon probably at the moment.
Yeah.
But I don't want to lose the pound as our backup currency in the world. We got a lot of power with the pound, and we go to the euro, we lose that power, and we can't control our own currency. That means we can't easily print money if we needed to print money.
Well, obviously, like we have our own national bank, so it'll be easy to kind of like formulate and regulate our own currency and the flow in which it takes regarding capital.
Personally, yeah.
But um, yeah, again, I think that we kind of need to look alternatively because the EU kind of started out as a economic zone, and then one of the reasons why the Brexit shift actually happened from people like Nigel Farage and UKIP is because it started to become a political zone. That's been ever recent in New Year's. Have you seen new deals around AI regulation, for example? That's been a new thing which is pushed through the EU in coming weeks. So I do think we need to kind of um, reduce the burden in which we would take if we was to go back in, because as you know, it was formed as an economic zone. Whether we want it to move into an economic and political zone is a totally different thing. But obviously, there's been a lot of talk around sovereignty, and I think people on the left also share a bit of idea about sovereignty. I think me and you do, and what you just said. Um, Not total sovereignty. Obviously, there still needs to be um, other small globalist entities for, say, the interconnection. But I do think we need to kind of watch on how our new European neighbours kind of formulate these kind of things and just be wary of them because obviously we are in a number of EU deals right now, such as the ECHR, I think the European Refugee Convention
Yeah.
or one of them. So those are still important things. Yeah.
We should not read the essay or whatever reforms say. We should not leave it, and Labour should not pander and start saying we should leave it. Like the Tories are at the moment. Because it'd be
Yeah.
stupid to leave it.
Well, one of the things that's come out quite recent is the digital ID. Whether me and you agree with that is a totally different thing. But if that was to be abused by a certain government, with say like tracking your location at all times, making it essential to pay for a shop at an item or pay for an item at a shop, sorry, then the ECHR actually protects those certain things, which is why these type of things are good.
Yeah. With the digital ID, I am a bit concerned, not because of Labour, if we formed it in, because they want to read the ECHR, then, and they read the ECHR, they can start tracking all the nodes of putting limit on what you do and tracking you through your
Yeah.
digital ID, because you haven't got the ECHR to back you up. That one I'm a bit skeptic about digital ID. Because what happened if we formed it in power? Labour have opened that door. The minute you open that door to it, it's hard to close it back.
Yeah, with Digital ID, I think, if entities like MI5 or HMRC wanted to get hold of a certain individual for whatever reason, then they are obviously firmly able to do that based on tax records, based on biometrics such as fingerprints, or, however you interpret data for privacy things. I think it is good that some access can be obtained by the government for, like terrorist incidents or whatever, right? But with reform wanting to leave the ECHR and what impact that would have on digital ID, I think that reform leaving the ECHR is essentially, I think it is an element of populism because Farage has recently, done a total U-turn on his 90 billion tax cuts regarding the increase in the tax rate, obviously in which you pay, which is £20,000. He wanted to move it to that. And he's recently scrapped those deals. So I think we do need to be wary in whether he's actually being genuine, but obviously it should be taken firmly at heart what he's trying to do. I think he would need a lot of the House of Lords to do this. I don't think Reform have got any particular policy right now to abolish the House of Lords, so that's going to be extremely hard for them. I'm honestly in support of digital ID as a concept because the new fiscal studies have shown that it would save more money than it would cost. So I think that's an exceptionally good thing. Obviously, you can access a number of services such as childcare, tax records, and whatever information you need for your day-to-day life. So I think that'll be really important. The information which has been kind of put on it right now is not incredibly clear because Keir Starmer did a press conference yesterday, and even I'll admit it wasn't incredibly clear. So I think that does need to be reiterated by whoever is working in the business department. But I think that the way in which Labour's done it is kind of been deregulated or derogatory in the reputation and status, because I think in the way in which they're trying to formulate it in terms of reducing illegal working, I personally don't think it's going to have that big of an impact. Maybe some people do. Obviously, I'm not in Number 10 Downing Street, so I will not obviously know what impact that will have.
I
It's
think
not
it
been
has
firmly
no
explained.
impact because bosses are not going, and they illegally working. They're not just going to ask for ID. They always got that job that they keep on going.
Well, a lot of people actually do steal other people's national insurance numbers. So I think it will reduce some, obviously not all, but there does need to be a public consultation on whatever's necessary.
Yeah, doing national insurance is a very low thing. I think it is not many people do that. Most
Yeah.
people do cash in hand jobs that are illegal more because they can dodge the tax man, not paying the right amount of tax, or not even telling the tax man they are earning because they could keep the money just in money to earn, not put it in the bank.
Yeah, I think that's quite popular in the north when you see like people going into trades, for example. So obviously there is an entity there. I think as we move more digitally, people are going to have to go for these type of things, or they're going to get caught out. Right? I mean, there's new investigations pending from HMRC already, people that are trying to tax evade. So I think that's especially important.
Let the I have to look at my notes. I want to get on to the big win of Labour in 2024 personally. That one thing I wanted to talk about. Because in the past, Labour did support a different electric system, more polarisation. I can't pronounce that word properly. They've supported a different kind of one, not first past the post. But now they won under third past the post. Keir Starmer had gone away and said he support third past the post when he wanted to change it in the past.
I mean, I can't comment that out fully because I've personally not seen Keir Starmer mention the fact that he's going to bring in proportional representation.
He
I
did
do
say
think it needs to come in at some
his
point.
conference to win Labour leader. He wanted.
Was it in the leadership campaign? All right.
Yes.
He said a number of things in the leadership campaign, so I'll have to have a look at it later. I'll take your word for it. And if that is the truth, then I think that he does need to consult his lower MPs about the possibility of introducing this. You have to think of the cost of this, though, as in a proportional representation system, Reform would have gathered hundreds of MPs last year. So that is something which people does need to look at. but I do think that it needs to come in at some point because I think the system in which we have now is not representing the people, for example, because a lot of people are tactically voting. You know, whether we agree with tactical voting or what impact it will have or what negative it will have, I think that people should have the choice to vote for whoever they please for
Yeah,
and
that
it make an
party they
impact.
support, not just putting their tit down to stop another party. If I were going to tackle a vote, I would already tackle a vote for probably two parties. It's Red Bull and Labour. I can't ever see myself tackling voting for the right.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen it again, but I imagine that Keir Starmer will consult the lower MPs because he's not met some, and that's still an issue, and that's something that the cabinet needs to focus on. I do think that Lucy Powell expects and she will win Labour leadership. So the results are gonna be coming out tomorrow. I do think that she's won it by around 55 to 65%. I do think it'll be a kind of a close margin. So I think that she's going to do some work around that and obviously get lower MPs involved and mainstream the new faction forms in the Labour Party. We'll obviously look at these type of things, but there just needs to be more kind of connection with the cabinet because it is kind of like I wouldn't say a divided cabinet, but I think there is a few differentiating interests in the cabinet, but they're all united under one leader. And that's very evident right now. You know, whether that's good or bad, they do need to consult the lower down MPs on these issues, and I think that is going to happen within the later stage of this year.
Yeah, I want to move to a new one because I do want to get away from third past the post because the only other country have third past the post is Belarus. And we need to stop preparing ourselves to Belarus on our voting system. We need to move to some kind of updated one. Because in the Senate, in Wales, you got more better representation. In Scotland, you have to. It's just England when you general election, we go back to the third past the post system. It's a way old school system.
Yeah.
We're ready on to some like more green policy and where you stand on where SAC are not brought SAC really into the conversation. As the Green, we got a new leader and we had this new leader for 1 month. SAC. He had double our membership from 60,000 to 140,000 members. We overtook the Tories in membership. We overtook the Liberal Democrat in membership. I mean, you have seen a big spike. Yes, the spike might not last for a good amount of years. It might slow down, might even speed up. We have to see. But that had been more like bold written with the 1% wealth tax.
Yeah.
Being capital gain tax in line with income tax. Tax is what I want to happen. Capital gain tax. You need to tax wealth. At the same, you tax pay at work. Do you think a 1% wealth tax would actually work, or are you more in line with paying capital gain tax in line with income tax, paying dividend tax in line, and does the tax we got, what we tax on wealth already, bring it in line what we tax with work?
Well, I think you've said it perfectly there, Cameron, regarding capital gains tax. Labour's obviously increased this on a number of private entities. So I think when people say that Labour are not taxing the rich, it's quite misleading because they are focusing on other things such as private jet taxes and increasing taxes on private skills. So I do think that that's need to be looked at. Am I in favour of 1% wealth tax? I'm obviously in favour of a wealth tax. It's just whether how this is consulted because there's been a lot of kind of what's the word? It's not been very clear what I think a lot of people are calling for when it comes for a wealth tax. Obviously, it needs to be discussed. What boundaries we're looking at regarding what type of assets. For how long. What specific rates. Will this actually create an impact? What proportion of it is going into certain industries and certain sectors, departments? So there needs to be a lot more talk around this type of things if it does need to happen. Rachel Reeves has actually been looking at a wealth tax. Whether she puts that in or not, I do think she's gonna do better this budget than she did last budget. When people say, there's a 15 billion black hole, it's around 26 to 38 billion. And obviously, there's a number of things such as gambling tax and other entities which she can tax on. So I do think that this will come out as a better budget for Labour. On Zach Polanski's membership, I'll comment on that now. Yes, there's been a spike, but there's also been a drop massively in your party popularity. Obviously, there was 800,000 email sign-ups.
Yeah, and people sign up for newsletter from other parties. I signed up to newsletter before from other parties to still see what they do.
Yeah. I signed up for it as well, and I know people across the left-wing spectrum which did do it as well. But I mean, there will be like a high proportion of this, like 1/8 or 2/8, which was not even in a party, or probably even more than that actually. So I do think that a large proportion of that has been dissatisfied with your party startup and has been more satisfied with Zach Polanski's startup. And I do think that that is where the popularity is going. But Labour's still the most popular party in England and Wales, and I do think it'll continue that way for many years.
I'll take that because they are losing. I don't see them the most popular party. I left Labour
Well, I mean,
over a year ago.
Reform's got 260,000. Labour's last year was 333,000. It's probably dropped by a few tens of thousands. But obviously, I do think they'll still remain on top spot.
Membership count is on 309,000.
That's what Reform's been saying. It's not been confirmed. It's probably going to be released tomorrow. But the figures which come tomorrow are not actually going to be correct. And they're going to be quite misleading because when you actually formulate how many people are voting in the deputy leadership election, obviously those will be added on, whatever options they choose. But they're also not counting members which haven't voted, have forgot to voted, or members who have joined in the last 6 months. So that's not being looked at. But yeah, I mean, 309,000, 310, 290, whatever it is, they're still above.
I left Labour over a year ago. I was a Labour member. I left it because of Keir Starmer's more to the right and personally cutting the winter fill payment for pensioners who actually need it. And I couldn't stay in the Labour Party when he was cutting winter fill payment for pensioners who actually need it. Yeah, billionaire pensioners should not have winter fill payment. But he set the cap way too low. He set it way too low. He set it at 25k.
Was it? I think it should have been 35,000.
Yeah, he set around about that. I could have said, okay, yeah, I don't want this, but it's 30k. Every other pension above that should be available to pay for their own gas and heating and electricity. But under that, you should get a help. But he set it around about, I think it was 13,000.
I can't remember.
It was around about that. We're just above pension credit. And he was a support that it wasn't in the Labour manifesto. We were going to take winter full payment away from people.
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and defend the winter fuel payment decision. I do think that some of it though did relieve it from people who didn't need it. But obviously, the bar needs to be raised. That's a consensus among many people, I think. But I do think that you need to look at especially the type of left-wing things they're doing, such as, like I said, free school meals, free breakfast clubs, nationalising all passenger trains,
the
B network.
Nationalise electricity and water.
They could, and they're making some starts to it. Obviously, they've taxed Thames Water hundreds of millions, and they're going to continue to either buy out existing contracts or wait for current contracts to deregulate and fall out. But we'll just have to see how it goes. I do think that it's going to be a successful run by the end of this parliament when you look at what changes they made to industry, and obviously you're seeing the benefits of this. And even a number of days ago, Rachel Reeves announced £10 billion of investment. It was only on that particular day, so that's massive. And they're obviously getting a number of AI investments from companies like Microsoft or Google. And if you look worldwide, we are the third best country when it comes to AI industry. So there's going to be a massive boost in industry when it comes to that particular sector.
Well,
On utilities,
with AI, we do need to be skeptical about AI. We don't want everything to go on AI.
yeah.
I want AI to be ethical and still give workers their jobs. Because you don't want AI to take away jobs from people. So that means we need
Well,
to.
with them taking jobs, I think obviously they are going to take some jobs, but the idea
We,
that I think on the statement that they're taking jobs, it's quite misleading again because what you've seen in the NHS, for example, you've seen these kind of AI systems actually been put in to formulate files more efficiently. That's going to relieve stress on workers and allow them to focus on the patient more. So I do think it is being more of a benefit than a burden.
yeah, done in an ethical way, it would be good to have to see what people control
Yeah,
it
yeah, definitely.
early in the NHS. Yeah, I support AI in certain areas, a bit more skeptical in other areas. Yeah, I think
Mm.
AI will be a good thing. 'Cause I'm into my tech, but it needs to be done in an ethical way, not taking jobs away from people who need the jobs, or making the job more easy for that person to do. That would be a good thing.
Yeah, obviously there's going to be some jobs which are going to
Mm,
be formulated out. Obviously, people, for
yeah,
example, in post office work or other entities. I'm not going to like expand on it massively, but and I think especially, I can use the example of Harold Wilson, for example. It was done horribly by Thatcher when she closed the coal mines because she didn't
yeah,
make, deals with the unions to actually like put the workers into other industries which they'd be good at. Harold Wilson did, and I think that's the most important thing we need to be looking at. What government will actually put them into an acceptable industry, one that's going to be good for them and the economy, and which government isn't going to do that. And governments like Reform or like if they decide or if they have ambitions to get in, would just do the complete opposite of what we're looking at.
yeah. We need to retrain workers if we're going to more AI to make sure they're supported in their work
Yeah.
and not losing their jobs with AI. You touched on the NHS personally, eh? You did with AI. I mean, I don't want to say my points on the NHS personally. With West Streeting, I think is not the best person to manage the NHS because you look at his donors and people who donated to West Streeting personally. He do get a lot of donations from private healthcare. Is that the best person to have in charge of the NHS? A person who have
Yeah.
high
So
interest in private, when
I
NHS should
think
be free. Like your dentist should be free. Your picking up your prescriptions should be free. In Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, that is free.
yeah.
England is the only place you pay £9.80, I think, for your prescription at your chemist.
So on lobbying, I think lobbying needs to be massively reduced, and if it can't be massively reduced, it needs to be regulated highly. But a lot of the donors from him, when we regard private companies, it's been from third parties. So like from groups that have been connected to private companies. I think that's what we need to look at. Obviously, it's still terrible to see that. Um, I do think that obviously when you view him as like a figurehead, the Department of Health and Social Care, obviously it would be like in principle, it would be optimal to have like a highly trained doctor as health secretary. But we all know that that's not good because you need to have someone who can actually regulate the department really, really well. I do think he's doing that because obviously you've seen NHS waiting list dropped. You've seen, there was an aim for 2 million NHS appointments within the first year. Back in May, Labour over doubled that to 4.5 million. So that's something that's massive. And on him being the best for the job, I don't see who else right now we're going to look at within the cabinet to do that job. obviously reshuffles are very, very prominent, but I do think that the resignation of Angela Rayner and the switching around of like David Lammy, Yvette Cooper, and Shabana Mahmood, like that freeway recycling, I don't think that reshuffles would be the best decision right now.
Yeah, I just think we should go back to having free prescription. We or the part of the United Kingdom who do not have that. Wales got another iron do.
Yeah, that's been a thing for many, many years. I don't know Labour's thoughts on that, honestly. But I imagine that it's going to be one of the things which they're questioned at. It's not been one of the biggest things yet. One of
No,
the
it's
biggest
not.
things right now is actually like employment for doctors. So I think that'll be prioritised over it.
Yeah, stop using more of the private sector because we don't have a private sector in the UK. Okay, most doctors in the UK work in the NHS and the private sector. I mean, when you go to the private sector, you personally still getting the same doctor. Just you take it away from the NHS. We don't have many
Yeah,
doctors who just work in the
yeah,
private
and when
sector.
people yeah, and when people like reform say that they're going to use the private sector mainly to put it in, I don't know how they're going to do that and reduce costs for normal people. But everyone knows that when you increase the burden and reliance on the private sector, it's going to also create issues for the public sector because everyone knows that the majority of the private sector is formulated by public sector doctors. So that's a massive thing.
Yeah, because they both work in the same ones, same pace.
Yeah, yeah.
I still think you should have free dental, free eye care. Of course, you need to go to the dentist. Most people in the UK don't go to the dentist because they don't want to pay the £30 to sit in the chair or
Mm.
pay more if they need work done to their tooth. That means they mostly suffer with toothache or suffer with bad teeth. With some people just suffer with bad eye because they don't want to pay for the eye test. It forcing people to just get on their health. That means we need to look into a free dentist, free eye test for people. Cause then you got all your health, and then you can go into work. And you can go into work. You're not got tooth pains, or your mouth is not working. Cause tooth pain is very powerful if you ever have toothache.
Yeah, on dental focus, that's been a massive thing in the health department. I think that Wes Streeton at a Labour conference was actually questioned on that. I can't remember what his response was. I think it's that he's going to work with other entities which are in the department. So I imagine that they can do stuff around that. And but one thing that I did hear the other day is that Labour have actually introduced what was the word? I think it was like extremely quick appointments, and they're actually going to be handing out like a lot of quick appointments for people in Somerset regarding dental care, and those are emergency appointments.
Yeah.
So you obviously know that this has been prioritised.
Yeah, I go into the dentist next week. I broke my teeth. I can absolutely afford it, but I should not be paying £373 just to fix my teeth. Because
Absolutely.
I did sadly fall off my bike a couple of weeks ago and cracked my teeth. Not everybody who in work can afford £373 out of the blue for their teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry to hear that, but I think that material cost is a big thing in dental care because as you've seen, like you said, like going out of the EU, material cost has been a big, big thing, and within dental care, they're not actually getting a lot of the equipment which they need to conduct these kind of operations, for example.
Yeah. Thank you for when I fall off my bike, I chipped my tooth or two, lost a tooth, and did something to my neck. My tin. I cut my tin a bit.
Yeah, sorry to that.
It was on a drop drain in my house. Didn't see it in the dark. I went over my handlebars. Boss, it was very painful. It was. I was more angry at myself than hurt. But I need to wrap up the film because we had gone more than expected. We was expecting sort of 30-minute debate. It has been nearly 30 minutes. I mean, I think maybe Labour will improve in the future. I think personally the Green will hold some power in the next general election. We will not win the next general election. We hold some kind of power. Hopefully Reform do not win. If Labour get their hat together, they will not win. We need to see real change from Labour moving back to their roots in core sector, reducing the NHS, building more houses, and stop fighting and more to the right. If they can do that, they will win in the next general election more better. If they're not going to do that, they already got themselves to blame losing to Reform.
Yeah, I think they are going to shift that way. But I think like you mentioned them returning to their roots, I think it's a bit hard for a party to return to its roots, because if Labour returns to its roots with the kind of, there was obviously some communist ideas around that time. And I think that if Labour returned to its roots properly, it would kind of remove the whole democratic process of them actually being a party, because this is why you seen like New Labour rebranded as a more central entity. And what did it work for them? They won 3 big majorities, and the biggest landslide in UK political history. I think that returning to its roots was pretty hard, in the core of what it was made for at that time and who made it. But I think that they are going to shift more left in some areas. But we'll have to see. We can't tell the future, obviously. But
with New Labour, yeah, they did win 2 big majority under New Labour, Tony Blair and Keir Starmer for New Labour, but you had to look at the Iraq War with New Labour. But we haven't got really time to go into the Iraq War. Yeah, I got some good things on Iraq and all the stuff. I wanted to focus more into the UK, not follow diplomacy. I mean, I'm going to wrap it there because it has been near an hour. I mean, see you in my next video. Goodbye for now. Bye. Now we see the video within. There's the apple. I didn't go through everything I wanted to go in the film. I was ready to a time it of 1 hour. We did go over by 30 minutes. 30 minutes. We've already calculated 30 minutes for that. We will be doing no film within. I want to see history on Gaza. I want to see it on Palestine, because I know that is a big thing in the Green. You know my view on Palestine and Gaza. Gaza is a genocide. What happened there is a genocide. But the reason why I didn't into that debate is because we one at a time wanted to focus into the UK policies, not into foreign policies. We know my route on the UK genocide in Gaza. But not the Israel genocide in Gaza, UK being protected in the genocide in Gaza. That's what I meant to say. I will be talking to Finn Parliamentary to get another debate, possibly, and maybe there's another debate with another few TikTok people. I think they want a good debate, and let's see what comes from it. I mean, if you like this video, like it, and you comment below, you want to see more videos like this. If you haven't done, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're hopefully on the way to 500 subscribers. We're on 210 at the moment. We've stuck on 210 for a bit. We need to get to that 500 mark. I mean, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now, and bye.